8:01. It's been a while since I've
Let's
said
get
that. So over to you to kick us off.
back here. There we go. And so, for those of you who are new to us here on a Friday, our Friday, let's call it a ritual. We might talk about rituals later today, does start with us honoring the land where we are. The photo that you can see, I took, I think it was about 10 days ago. I was on SAIT's campus and took this picture. It's a tad grainy, but it speaks volumes when it comes to land recognition. And so, for a moment of reflection for myself as I took the photo and thought, wow, there's a lot going on in there. The teepee is always erected at this time of year for the start of our school year and really honors Indigenous presence, resilience, the cultural continuity that we all stand with. And then in the background to the right, you've got one of our main buildings on SAIT's Calgary campus, which is Heritage Hall. Obviously speaks of legacy, historical shifts, and the responsibilities that come with us for reconciliation. And then to the left-hand side, the crane busy in ongoing development construction of our new Taylor campus, which I think might be a next year opening. And as the
27,
land, yes, and as the
fall
land
27.
continues to evolve with it, our responsibility to honor our original stewards. So this morning, Craig and I join you from what we call Calgary, traditionally known as Macintas, the meeting of two rivers, and it is the traditional lands of the Blackfoot Confederacy, which is the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai First Nations, the Tsuut'ina Nation, and the Îyârhe Nakoda Nations of Chiniki, Bearspor, and Wesley. So we always take a moment just to recognize our enduring connection to this land, and we're committing to a respectful engagement with the past, the present, and the future, as the photo shows. Thanks, Craig.
Perfect. Thank you, Jenny.
Welcome.
Um, Before we get going here, we thought it might be a great idea to take a moment and introduce ourselves. This is episode 89 for us.
Yeah.
Some of you have been here for many of them. Some of you may be joining us for the first time. But I am Craig Hess. I am the Director of Business Development, Corporate and International Training here at SAIT. I'm responsible for leading the team that is working with industry to help your organizations upskill and reskill employees to really respond to the changes in the world of work. And we're very happy to be able to have that opportunity to work with many great Calgary organizations. Part of what we do is leadership development. And on that note, Jenny, I'll turn to you.
Thank you. And I am Jenny. So my name's Jenny Gilbert. I've worked with Craig and his team for many years now, primarily these days as a leadership development specialist. Although many of you in here will attest, I can still be found in a classroom frequently, so also as a facilitator for SAIT as well. And my responsibility is to answer the questions. So here I am today to try and answer questions. There we go.
Perfect. And to that point, just a reminder, because I know the room's still populating, please, as you can see, feel free to carry on your comments to anything that we're speaking about here in the chat. There's often, like I say, there's often great things in there that Jenny and I go back and dig out, and often great opportunity for future conversations get spurred in there. But if you end up with a specific question, please try and use the Q&A function. And to Jenny's point, we are here to answer those questions. So as we're going through and um, working on today's topic, which is leading through chaos, if you have a specific question, feel free to pose it. But Jenny, so this whole concept of leading through chaos, probably no better time than September with back to school.
Mhm.
Back to school with potential looming strike and or lockout here in Alberta. So that could be very interesting. There always seems to be something going on in the world of politics, whether it's north of the parallel or south of the parallel. We're not going to go down what those things might be. We're looking at everything emerging with AI tech. There is a
Yeah,
lot going on. And it seems that everyday leaders have to manage more and more and keep their eye on a lot more things and try and keep their teams with their eye on the prize, so to speak. So I don't know what that triggers for you to start with, but there's the chaos. How do we
it
help
is.
folks lead their teams through this?
I think I think when you first started speaking, that's a really good place for us to start. No better place to start than September. And you mentioned our school systems here in Alberta. It's only one part of it, but if you have a child in the public school system in Calgary, the CBE, chaos is pending, and we know that it might be coming. And I think that's a really key sentence. We know that it might be coming. So when we talk about leading through chaos, our worlds these days are quite chaotic. And to be fair, we've made them chaotic. Like we
Mhm.
honor busyness, we throw in, I don't know, new strategies, X, Y, Z. Let's run an experiment that's exceedingly trendy too. And so we overload as well. And so to me, there's two parts to this. One is, can you prepare for this? And if you can, what is that about? I think there's probably three arms to that: yourself, your team, what's going on. And
Mhm.
then if you find yourself, as many of us did in the pandemic, suddenly in the middle of chaos, what's your go-to then when you didn't know this was coming, but all of a sudden you realize, the clip that keeps springing to mind is that Monty Python 100 meters for the directionally challenge. Like everybody's just going through it. It's funny. If you need a laugh today, look that one up. So I think those are the two areas that we might want to dig into.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, excuse me. So why don't we start with the fact that, it's day 5 of September. We're probably many of us back into the chaos. Let's
Mm,
start with how do we work with chaos that is swirling around us at the moment, and then we can perhaps transition to it at the end, you know, when we see chaos coming down the road. So, um, I often think about this when you've got so much going on with your team, whether your numbers are up, down, sideways, if your goals are numbers, usually
mhm,
they are for a lot of teams. If things aren't going well and there's things in the market that are driving things, whether that might be tariffs, et cetera, et cetera.
mhm.
Um, I think a leader's responsibility in that time is to certainly acknowledge everything that's happening, but try as hard as you can to keep your team focused on the goal,
Yeah.
right?
So it's I think what we're talking about is bringing clarity back. Like what is the direction that we're heading in, and what is the signal that we want our team to follow? And this too is harder if you're working with virtual or hybrid teams,
Mhm.
because you're not in touch with them as frequently as you are when you're working face to face. Doesn't mean that it's impossible. It just means the cadence of the conversation and information maybe changes a little bit. So it's more frequent when we're not in close contact. And what we want to do is keep that sort of clarity, keep that focus on the goal, as you said. Like, our aim is to do business, whatever that goal may be. But I think the key for the leader is when things start to swirl, you can over fixate on that goal and forget that it's the people that you're working with that are going to achieve that goal for the most part.
Mhm.
So, care of your people, recognizing your people, makes a big difference in whether you'll reach that goal or not. So, how are you setting your people up for success? And within there, a couple of things that are happening. One, we have to ensure that our people matter, that they know they matter. So seen, heard, and valued are the three ingredients always to make sure that your people know they matter, know that they're significant. Because if we know that, then we're much more likely to do the work we're supposed to do. And then there's your second part: what is the work that they're supposed to do? So when we get chaotic, there's a ton of noise around us, a lot of noise. And we live in, I say this often, and I think it was Rasmus Hugart who said it first of all, is a paid reality. So we're always under pressure, we're always on information overload and distracted. So that in itself creates noise. And then chaos creates noise. So, how do you help reduce that noise so that your team can stay on the path that they want to? And for those who might be struggling with, what are you talking about, Jenny? How many meetings are your team attending that are actually valuable meetings that will cause something to happen? Right? One of the things we go to first of all when it's chaos is it just accept, accept, accept. Well, you just lost 3 hours in the day that you could have had back to focus on the things that matter.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I've seen in my career is that when times get chaotic, um, you run into leaders who want to try and control it all, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so right, there is that piece around, yes, you have to keep your team. I love this, focus on the signal, not the noise. Keep them focused on the goal, the task at hand. But I think just focusing on the task at hand by trying to control it with more meetings, more communication, et cetera, in and of itself can contribute to that,
Hmm.
right? So there is something around this idea of being able to. We've talked about pause meetings before, PAUSE, not PAWS. That'd be, I guess, perhaps if you worked at the SPCA, you might have pause meetings.
Yeah.
But there is perhaps value in that moment of pausing with your team and saying, okay, we're currently in it,
Hmm.
right? How are we going to work together to get through it?
Yeah. And I like in that I love the idea of a pause. Like as a leader, you control the clock. So that is in your control to literally, if you like, it's almost like stop the clock. You've got everybody together. And when things are ambiguous, things are uncertain, things are chaotic, we want to create the clarity. And it falls on us to do that. So, it's almost three simple things. Here's what we know, here's what we're doing. And if you need to, come really short term. Like this is for the next day. This is what we're doing. It might be for a week. It depends on where you're at. And then the third one is here's what we're watching, or here's what we're paying attention to, because there is more than one signal. Like we've got this direction that we're heading in, but we do want to be keeping an eye. So let's narrow that down too, so that we're keeping an eye on the right things, so we're getting the right information in. So here's what we know, here's what we're going to do, and here's what we're watching. But within that, and this was a really important point that you made, is our job as leaders is not to be the bottleneck, not to constrict everything so that people feel suffocated by the chaos that's going on. Like everybody is an adult with a skill set that has chosen to work for you. And so coming back to trust and autonomy is really important for your people, because we
Mhm.
don't want to feel like we're just being herded like cattle or treated like kids. We're adults and we have a skill set. And then the minute that we dive into that, we also have different personalities. So as a leader, you've got to know your people, because some people thrive in chaos. This is when they come alive.
Yeah.
And then there are others that are terrified of it or anxious of it and naturally more hesitant and can't find the boldness or the courage that they need to take the action that needs to happen. Those are two different ways to lead. And so, in what we do at SAIT, like we're often working with Lumina, and so you've got tools that you can use to see this. But if you don't have a tool that you can use to see it, if you know your people, you'll know where they show up with the energy and the vibrancy, and you'll know where they show up with the hesitation, I think.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point. Is because to you've seen it. I'm sure we've all seen it. Those who do jump in when it gets crazy,
Mm-hmm.
and they love it, and they
Mm-hmm.
just embrace it and they run with it. And at the same time, when things are mundane, routine, etc., you can see them shrink back and go, "This is a little boring for me,"
I
right?
don't know what to do.
Um, and so yeah, I was just noticing a conversation in the chat here around the acronym pause. I truly did not mean it as an acronym, but Brittany, I love
A
the
good
answer
one. I
that you
like
provided
Britney's,
there.
yeah.
Yeah. I was literally talking about it is sometimes worthwhile to just take a pause with your team, bring them together and
Hmm.
discuss the item at hand versus trying to just simply keep going forward like things are normal, everything's fine. All right, you don't want to start, you don't want the band playing on the deck as the Titanic is sinking. That's not what we're talking about here, right? But it is really about just acknowledging that you are in this together.
Hmm.
And part of the challenge I think some leaders face is that when things get chaotic, they feel they have to have the answers. And
Yes.
it's okay to not, right?
Yeah.
You should have the questions, right? That's part of why you're being paid to be a leader is you should be able to ask the questions about, okay, where can we simplify? Where's our focus need to be? What is it? And perhaps more importantly, we can talk about this a little bit, Jenny, is, the focus on the process, the focus on your systems versus necessarily the focus on the outcome, right?
Hmm.
Because when things get chaotic and you keep your eye on the goal, so to
Hmm.
speak, that goal may or may not now be achievable.
Hmm.
But, if you can focus on the process and systems to keep moving you toward it, I don't know if that triggers anything for you.
Yeah, I think it does, and I think it's an important part of it because often we lose track of that, especially when we're first submerged in chaos. But the piece I'd add to it is, keep an eye on the progress as well. So
Yeah.
we're not very good at recognizing small wins or progress in real time. And there's studies on this. I can't for the life of me remember who did them, but people will rate their day between a meh kind of day and a great day simply by the progress that they've made. And
Mm.
so, if that goal is out there, okay, that's the destination, but the direction and the development that we're making, let's honor that. And so, what are your success, let's call them success rituals. I mentioned the word ritual earlier, but how do we do that? How are you recognizing progress? And virtually it might be as simple as and not every day, but in a team chat, what progress have you made? Tell me about your progress. And that gives you a window on what's going on, but it also allows people to stop and think, oh, actually, I've done A, B, and C. That's not bad at all. And, we, as adults, again, we want to stand on the summit before we've even walked up the hill. So
Yeah.
break it down and help people break it down and recognize it within there as well. And there's a consistency piece in there too. And James Clear, as that infamous example about the X's, if you have a string of boxes and you put an X in each box each time you achieve something, apparently we are motivated beyond belief to not break the chain once it gets going. So
Yeah.
that might be something that works too.
Yeah, I think he actually got that from Seinfeld, who talked about the act of writing jokes daily, and it's just
Right.
keep building that chain, right?
Yeah.
And more importantly, and that chain is going to get broken, but don't miss 2 days in a
There you
row,
go. Hmm.
right? That
Yeah.
consistency piece. And it's interesting you bring up James Clear because one of the things that I thought about this as we were talking today, um, his comment around you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? And so that is when things get chaotic, you can sometimes run into this piece of, well, we need to change everything
Yes.
to address where we're going. And that is where taking that moment to pause and say, okay, what do we need to change anything? Right?
Yeah.
There are times where the chaos is going to be there and you just have to keep your head down and go through it, right? Um, but sometimes you do need to make small adjustments to your system, or maybe you need to make big ones. But that fact of just keeping your team focused on what has worked, why it's worked,
Hmm.
can it still work,
Good question. Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
You may or may not know that answer. Your
Hmm.
team probably has great ideas as to whether that is true or not. I don't know.
And I like that too. Like your team does have great ideas and your team does know. And
Absolutely.
so there's an important cadence as well as the communication with them. But you mentioned something, I can't remember what it was, and made me think carefully about this, that for a leader, like this is hard work. Leadership is hard work. Um, but are you making that pause for yourself as well? And
Mhm.
it might be Greg McKeown who talks about it, but he refers to mini offsites, and that mini offsite is just for you. And so that might mean that actually you're going to go have coffee just with yourself, or you're going to go stand outside. Now we've got some clear, fresh air here. You're going to go stand outside and get some fresh oxygen and just pause for yourself and reconnect with priorities, right? And I did use the plural there, but are we on the right track? Are we looking at the right things? As a leader, am I seeing the right signal? Because we can, I think you mentioned this earlier, we can amplify noise if we're not checking in on ourselves. And the other
Yep.
part too is if we're not looking after ourselves, this becomes really, really hard to do. And so that flips right back to something we were saying at the beginning is if, especially when you know it's coming, how are you going to look after yourself? And those, we're switching into a little bit of boundaries here, but I don't have to work 24/7 in the industry I'm in when it's chaotic. So my computer or my access will turn off at 6 o'clock. My team know how to get hold of me if it's an emergency. And I pick six as a number, could be four, could be seven, whatever your world is going on. But I think that looking after yourself, and even just in the day, just taking the pause, recollecting, and then being able to take the foot forward. And in a classroom, I'll often get people to stand up, and if they're able to stand on tiptoes, and then if they're able to stand on one foot on tiptoes. And you know, you try this in your kitchen if you're listening to us. But when you're in that pose, you can't really do anything. Like it's really wobbly, and we are wobbly, and we spend a lot of our time caught in that kind of piece.
Yeah.
Whereas if you put 2 feet firmly on the ground, you choose. Right? You choose whether you go forward, choose whether you stay still. You can even choose to take a step backwards, which sometimes is worthy.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really key for our leaders is how do you help yourself? Probably the term for it is stay grounded in the
Mhm.
chaos as well.
Yeah, that's really good. Question here is, what if the chaos is triggered due to resistance to change?
So, and we're really sort of, I'm going to have to say probably because it's all contextual.
Yes.
The personality piece here and change is a classic. We will have, what do they call them? Early adapters, I think. The people
Hmm.
who just love it, tie into it, get on with it. And then we've got the people who move slowly, and then we've got those who are resistant to change. Other thing that we have to be aware of is how much change have you placed on your people recently? Change exhaustion is a thing. And so the piece that always gets forgotten in change, we manage change quite well. Like there's an entire industry for change management. You can have a career in change management. We manage change well. We don't lead change all that well all the time. So in leading change, what we're really concerned with again is the people. So if there's a resistance to change, who is resistant to change? What is causing that resistance? Again, your people know. And what do they need to help sort of move from within there? And then your job as a leader is to help them move. And sometimes the people who are resistant, they don't want to be disappointed again, or they don't want to put the energy in that's required. Like they have a good reason. To them, it's a good reason. Now, if you're an early adopter, this gets a little bit difficult to understand because you can't understand that reason.
Yeah.
All right, well, we've got to pause and realize that their perspective is theirs. Let's honor that, seen, heard, and valued, and then figure out a way to help them to move. And often your early adapters can be very helpful in there too, as well.
Yeah, if you can figure out how to recruit them into it and
Mhm.
help them bring the team along, absolutely. Um, Challenge it sometimes if you end up with that um, character. We've all worked with those early adopters who just don't get it when nobody else can see what they're seeing.
This is true.
That can be tough.
Yeah.
Um, the follow-up question here is wondering about resistance to change due to change fatigue. How do you motivate those staff?
Well, change fatigue, change exhaustion it's real. And so I think before your people can hear you, they need to feel heard. So again, it's pressing that pause and validating their emotions. Right? If they're
Yeah.
exhausted with it, they're fed up with it, whatever that part might be, they are the container for their emotions. And so they need, like, hear them. Doesn't mean that you're going to change it, doesn't mean that you have to agree with it. But I like these days to talk more about compassion than empathy. And compassion says, I'm with you during the challenge. I'm here. I'm going to hear you. Yes, that's tough. Yes, I hear you. And once they feel heard, they are far more likely to hear you. So once we've done that part, then we can work with people to say, okay, they get it. And this is the way that we have to, like, we don't have a choice in this part. So let's figure out a way that we can move within this change that's now upon us. What do you need? Right? Which bits do you like? Which bits are really causing the heels to dig in and the grimace or whatever that might be?
Yeah.
And just keep the conversation going. That's change leadership. Change management says we'll do it this way, we'll do it this way, and here's the plan to get there. Change leadership says I hear you and I'm going to work with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So flip it to the other side of the spectrum now is how do you motivate people frustrated by the resistance to change? How do you motivate those who are frustrated by the resistors?
People are just messy, aren't they? There's people
Yeah.
everywhere. We don't have the people, we'd be okay.
Yeah. We
So
never
I
talk
think
about the middle of the bell curve. We're just
no.
talking about the tails.
I think it's more or less the same thing. I think we need to hear them. They're frustrated, right? And
Yeah.
frustration, it can be a little bit of a helpful emotion, but it's not a great one to run on and fuel yourself by every day by any means. It's not particularly comfortable or pleasant. So, hear the frustration, and then what is a better one to access? So, yeah, and it depends on your people. Okay, so to your point, if this is somebody who might be great at working with someone else, maybe they can help somebody else to see this and bring them along, right? Mentorship, buddyship, whatever you want to call that piece. That may be a possibility. Maybe they're a character that they're so frustrated they don't want anything to do with that. Well, what can you direct their focus to whilst everybody else catches up a little bit in there?
Hmm.
And if the change is something that motivates them and they're excited by that, they may be your person that can sort of forage the way ahead so that path is just a little bit clearer as everybody else follows through. But the same piece goes for the don't let them just go. Right? Stay in touch with them, and they need to be seen, heard, and valued too. And their progress needs to be honored appropriately. So it's true leadership. It's different depending on the person who's in front of you. It's not just this is my way, come my way. It's, oh, okay, here's you and here's you. I'm going to have to show up just a little bit differently with a lot of awareness for these people on my team.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's an individual that you could perhaps, as you mentioned, lean on to take on something new, try something
Yeah.
different, to
Yeah.
test for the team. And then also pointing out that you do not want a team of 100% entirely similar individuals,
No.
right? And everybody is going to react and respond differently. I, in prior life, led a team, and one of the team members was a job that you could do this would go hit the gym for an hour and a half in the afternoon because that was his way of burning off steam,
Mm-hmm.
right? And somebody else on the team was just, to your earlier comment, heads down 24/7, just keep trying to grind it out. They both handled it differently,
Yeah.
right? And so that's exactly what you're getting at there. Um, how do you, as a middle manager, help lead through change exhaustion when you yourself are experiencing the same change exhaustion with little to no support from executives?
I think the first go-to you have to look after yourself, right? If what is the expression? If your cup isn't full, you really can't fill other people's cups. You can't help other people. So if you are in that state of exhaustion or fed up with the change or stuck in the cloud because it's just
Mhm.
constantly coming, where's that mini offsite going to be now? If you don't know, I'm not saying go take a week off. It's possible, it's a way, but probably not helpful. And so maybe it's an afternoon, and not necessarily away from the office. Close your door and just stop and sort of reconnect. Take the pause that we talked about beforehand, and okay, what do I need in this situation? And we all have, Brené Brown calls them your square squad. Like it's just 4 or 5 people who are they're almost like your crystal clear. They're kind of advocates. They're also people that you trust, and they're very, very honest as well. And so sometimes getting some help, advice, maybe it's just a conversation with somebody who's outside of it, just to help you clear some of the sort of chaos that ensues when you're exhausted in that state. Because when we become overextended or in overcapacity, our minds get full, right? Think huge, great big knot of full. There's no
Mhm.
space for anything else. And somebody wants to put an entire new process or change in on you. You're like, I can't take this on. I don't even know how to begin. That's a mindful. And where we want to get to is being mindful. There's a play on words here, but hopefully you
Yeah.
can imagine there's a hyphen that makes a difference. And so that pause and actually stopping and recollecting in, okay, here's the priority. Here's the steps that we need to get to. Here's what I'm aware of. Here's what I can let go of. And that's important too, because in a mindful, crazy one, we've got a lot of stuff that we can let go of. And what will I do to create the space to be able to work in this? And then the other thing, and one of the strategies that I'll talk about at the end, and it's a phrase I love, Chris Rambo gave it to me, is strike while the iron is cold. We always say strike while the iron is hot, but strike while the iron is cold. So, the next time that you're bursting with energy and you feel good and your systems, your body systems, your emotional regulation, whatever that might be, you're in a good place. Well, what are you doing? Are you sleeping a lot? Are you eating differently? Like all of those kind of things that really fuel us to be able to show up. Performance is not just the technical skills on the job. Performance is all of us. And so if we notice that and we make note of that while the iron's cold, then when it gets hot and confusing and all the rest of it, we've got some stuff that we can go back to and say, okay, I know this works for me. I'm going to do this. And teams can do this too. If in the industry that you work in, sometimes things get really, really chaotic. Well, in a meeting, when it's not, right? And especially if you've got sort of access to those kind of personality profiling, what happens to us when we're in chaos? What happens to us when we're overextended? And all our different personalities behave differently. Well, let's have a conversation about that. And let's talk about, when I'm overextended, my brain goes into big picture thinking and I want to create 5 different ways to do this. Craig, when that starts happening, you're going to recognize it and it's going to annoy you. Here's the phrase you can use just to bring me back to Jenny we're dealing with today, not 2 months down the line. And when we set them up when it's cold, when it's easy, it flows easier when it's chaotic. And you got to think about it. It's not easy to do.
No, not at all. You want to become a chaos prepper, I guess.
New job
Uh,
title. There we go.
there you go. A couple more questions, and then I'm just keeping an eye on our time as well. But as a leader, how can you lean in to support and confidently communicate changes that you personally may not fully agree with, especially when those changes are being strongly driven by your boss and your team is already feeling frustrated by the impact? What strategies can help you sell the idea to your team in a way that maintains credibility?
Yeah. This is a common ask and it's a tough one.
Yeah.
So I think the work here is in the preparation beforehand. So your boss gives you what's coming down the pipe or the change or whatever it is, and you disagree vehemently. Okay, there's a conversation there because if your job is to influence your team, then you've got to find ways that you agree. Now, the piece that, when we disagree vehemently, we don't get it, we don't like it, there's an emotional part that plays in there. Right? So there's an emotional regulation piece. I am frustrated, whatever. Okay, we've got to access something different that's going to be helpful. Right? So what would be more helpful in this situation? Maybe, and it often gets badly defined, but maybe it is an optimism. Well, you can't access optimism if you're grumpy, right? You've got to help your body get to that part. And then the other part is somewhere somebody believed this was a really good idea. Like nobody sets off and says, all right, let's just put our business into some kind of chaos that will really ruin our business. That doesn't happen. So somewhere along the line, this was a good idea. So have that conversation with your boss. Make that time. Again, you control the clock. Pause. Fill me in. I've got to understand why this is good and why this benefits my team.
Hmm.
And if it really doesn't benefit my team, who does it benefit so that I can sell this to my team to move in the direction that we want to? So it really does lie with you to find the things. And then I think when you're talking to your team, there's an honesty. Now, I don't mean the honesty with, I think this is a rubbish idea. I think there's the honesty with, here's where I see the win. Here's where I'm a little bit stuck and still working through it. And I think as a team, once we've had a good conversation about this, we can figure out how to work it. So it's okay to own some of that difficulty with it, but be careful in how you're moving the language with it.
Yeah, and that's that I hate to say it, but that's part of the job of being that middle manager is
It is.
being able to play that role of trying to figure out You know, how do you hold up an umbrella and shelter your team sometimes from what's falling down from above?
Mhm.
And how do you also act like an amplifier to,
Mhm.
transmit back up to your
Yeah.
leadership? It's
Yes.
it's not an easy role, right? If this was easy, we wouldn't be doing this every other week, right? I work on a team, and part of my job is influencing frontline workers who do not report to me. I'd like to hear your ideas on asking people to make important changes. Then, when those changes aren't made or disregarded, how does someone like me proceed?
I think the biggest help in this situation is your social capital. Your social capital is the relationships that you've built with your people. So here we're talking about get to know them, right? Help them feel significant, help them matter. So we talked about that already, seen, heard, and valued. And then also building trust with people. We are much more likely to move when we trust the person that's asking us. And so building trust is something that we've talked about a lot in our previous episodes. There's numerous different ways that we can build trust. Typically, here at SAIT, we work within Feltman structure. So that would be competence, reliability, sincerity, and care. And when we build trust, and you as the person can build trust with all those frontline individual contributors on a daily basis. And once you've got that foundation, then asking people is becomes much easier because we will move when we trust people, or we'll listen when we trust people. And then, they don't report to you, but you can still hear them, and you can still be a conduit in that,
Yeah.
okay, this one got adopted easily, report that back. This one, we're struggling with this one, report that back. And so you become just a little bit of a sort of cog, if you like, in the stream. But if they're not your direct reports, that's probably the easiest way to move that.
Yeah, that's good. Um, you said something earlier that triggered my thinking around. We've been talking a lot about what leaders can do to help their team through chaos. I
Mhm.
think there's also the what a leader should not do to contribute to the chaos,
Mm,
right? Because I think we've all probably, unfortunately, at some point, either worked with, worked for, perhaps been one of those leaders that is contributed. Hey, we're all human, right? And it kind of somewhat ties into some of the questions that have been here around if you
mm.
don't necessarily agree with the change or you're struggling personally with the chaos. Um, what should leaders avoid?
I'm trying to sort of shrink it down to a couple of things. One, avoid being focused just on the outcomes. And we spoke about progress. Be really, really careful of recognizing progress. And then your next sentence is but or however. However is the fancy Nancy version of but, because you just negated everything that you just celebrated. So you have to keep your eye on the outcome, yes, but I can't believe I just said that. You have to keep your eye on the outcome, and there's a time and a place for each kind of communication. So be careful of mixing up all your communications and chucking everything at everybody at once. Um, be really careful of moving the goalposts. And I see this a lot. I think it's reactive to what's going on. It's really confusing when the goalposts keep moving. And literally it sounds like last week you wanted this and this week you want this, are we sure? That is a high indication that people feel like they're being moved across here. And I think the other key one, so what not to do is, I'm going to switch it to what you can do is easier. It's know yourself, right?
Hmm.
Self-awareness. And we're not great at self-awareness. We know that. But what happens to you when you're overextended? What is your personality? So, in some of our personalities, let's say you're really good at having the difficult conversations. Well, when you're overextended, what you might be really good at is creating conflict for the sake of conflict or winning at all costs. And what we don't want to do is switch into that where our strengths become really unhelpful. And so self-awareness allows us to just pause and say, how am I showing up today? Like, what is the temperature that I'm bringing to the room? And if you want to lead to the signal, not the noise, your temperature control is really important. Hopefully that went somewhere too.
Yeah, well, I think you touched on a couple of really important things, and that is, consistency,
Yep.
uh, being consistent as a leader, um, being calm, I think is also a really important
If you
piece.
can.
And that
Yep.
if you can, sometimes you can't. But I think the other piece too is that chaotic times sometimes bring out the need for leaders to perhaps try and understand more of the business, more of their team, et cetera. May start looking for things that they didn't look for before.
Yep.
But just communicate why you're doing it, right? It's
Absolutely.
sometimes to your point around the whether it's in person or a hybrid team, sometimes over communicating, quote unquote, is what you need to do because in chaotic times, people can get nervous. People can get worried about their status on the team,
Oh yeah.
the point of
Mm-hmm.
their
Mm-hmm.
job. How do you, if you have to, as a leader, are doing different things just out of the blue without explaining the context, that is really a challenging piece. And so,
Yeah.
right, be consistent, be communicative. Yeah, I think
And
those
I
are
and I
those
think
key
that that
things.
communication piece is key. Like that is it. That's all that we're really talking about. And how will you communicate? So again, on your team, different people will respond differently. I like that you said over communicate. It does feel like that for us as leaders because that cadence has to be frequent. And I often say this, I can say something on day one, the delivery will come back on day two and say, okay, what do we remember from day one? Everybody looks at me like, we don't remember when we're just told once. And so it's the cadence and the rhythm of holding to what's going on. And then what am I up to as your leader? I'm not on the front lines. So what am I up to? And communicating that and your progress as well.
Absolutely.
I think that's great. I caught something in the chat. I don't often look at it. The four things for trust are competence, reliability, sincerity, and care. I found there was a little spiel going on there. Sorry.
Nope, it's perfect. But as I look at this, there are a couple more questions. I'm just looking at our time. I think we're gonna have to get to the questions in our follow-up. Because we're trying, if you're new here, we're trying very hard to keep these to 45 minutes so everybody can get on to their 9 a.m. or their 11 a.m. or if you're in Newfoundland, you're 2:30 p.m. right now.
Yeah, plus a half, yeah.
Um, we always wrap up with a big idea, a couple of strategies and questions from Jenny for you to consider.
I love the way that you've moved it just two questions. We did start with three questions, but I'm not very good at three. So thank you, Craig. We talked about this. It did come up in conversation. Sometimes these don't come up in our conversation, and sometimes they do. So our takeaways for today, the big idea, I think this is crucial, is what is the signal, right? What lead to the signal, not to the noise. And that takes practice to recognize what noise is and to help people to calm the noise. You have a role in that as a leader, but your people always also have a role in recognizing what noise is, and they may need your help to decipher that from time to time. So, two strategies that will help us with that, we talked about this a little bit too, is in ambiguity and uncertainty, your job as the leader is to create the clarity. And so that clarity might come by focusing on the direction, not necessarily the destination, but the immediate direction. Break it down to short term if you need to. And I think we said these earlier, what do we know? What are we doing for whatever amount of time? And what are we paying attention to? And bring it back into that cadence of conversation. How often is that happening? And these can be short, they can be just nuggets, but it's helpful to keep everybody on track within the path that you want them to be. And then the second one, I just spoke about this recently, strike while the iron is cold. So what do you need to set your team and yourself up for success? Great place to start here is with you. Take some time to recognize, here are the strengths that I have. Even that is a difficult job for some people to do, but here's the strengths I have, and here's what happens to them when I end up overextended or caught in the chaos, whatever that might look like, so that we just start to build that self-awareness. Here's my strategies. Here's what I will go to. And then you can extend it onto your team. Ask the team to do some work for them. And as I alluded to, there's tools and assessments that we can use to help with that. But you can do it on a self-reflection piece as a starting place too.
Yeah,
And
we're
then
gonna
our
have to make.
question, say again,
Sorry,
sorry.
Jenny. I was just gonna say we're gonna have to make Chaos Prepper t-shirts, I think.
Well, we'll have them. We can be on that case. It's running. And then we'll get rid of the three, but just some questions. Some of these, save them for when it's chaotic, right? Have them in your back pocket. This is your pause. What are you going to do? Some of them might be relevant to here and now. There's many of us that do feel like we're in constant chaos. And so taking that pause for yourself may be the most helpful thing you can do. So they're all up there for you. When we share the post session email, there's a link and you can get back to these slides and you can get back to the questions. So if you didn't get your screenshots done in time, they're all available on the links within the email that comes out next week at some point.
Absolutely. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Jenny, as always.
Thank you.
This is like riding a bike. It was great to be back. But yeah, we are back again on September 19th. I think we might touch on some themes we touched on today
Indeed.
about being a resilient leader. And one thing I will add, folks, is if you are intrigued, interested in any of what you've heard today, we certainly have programming at SAIT that can help you with any of these pieces, whether it's for yourself or for your team. We'd love to hear from you to be able to help you out. So with that, enjoy a wonderful weekend. Jenny, as always, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And take care, everybody.
Thank you, Craig. Take care, everyone. Have a good weekend.